Do you feel like you are chasing goals that never truly satisfy you? Nietzsche warned that this is the signal you are living by borrowed values instead of your own. You feel lost, but not in the way you think. It is not because something is wrong with you. It is because the ground beneath you has shifted in ways most people never notice. For centuries, human beings moved through life with ready-made answers. Religion told them who they were. Tradition told them what to value, and family told them how to live. There was no need to ask why, because the script was already written. But Nietzsche warned that those scripts would not last forever. He called it the death of God. What he meant was not only that religion would fade, but that the entire structure of inherited meaning would collapse. And when it collapses, it leaves a silence that feels unbearable. This silence is what you feel now, the sense that nothing quite fits, that every answer handed to you feels shallow. You chase career goals, relationships, approval, but none of them seem to settle the question that keeps echoing inside. What is the point of it all? That question is not proof of weakness. It is proof that the old world has already fallen for you. The promises of absolute truth, the comfort of believing someone else has the plan, no longer hold. You are standing in the ruins of meanings that once guided billions, and the first instinct most people have is to run back to them, to cling harder to old systems, old authorities, or shallow substitutes. But the harder you hold on, the emptier it feels. Nietzsche saw this clearly. He knew that once people realized the old gods and values had died, many would become desperate to replace them with illusions. He called it dangerous because illusions can never truly fill the void. You might tell yourself that success, popularity, or constant entertainment will give life a purpose, but you know deep down that they only distract you from the silence. And distraction is not meaning. It is only noise covering emptiness. Here is the secret Nietzsche wanted you to see. Feeling lost is not a personal flaw. It is not that you are broken or less capable than others. It is that you are awake to a reality most people deny. You see the cracks in the old answers, and that awareness feels heavy. But it is also the first step toward freedom, because when no system defines you, you are no longer trapped by them. The silence is painful, but it is also space. Space where you can begin to ask your own questions. Think about this. If every value you have inherited could vanish overnight, what would remain? What is worth keeping because it resonates with you? And what is worth discarding because it never belonged to you in the first place? These are not easy questions, and Nietzsche never pretended they were. But he believed that the collapse of old meaning was not the end of life's story. It was the beginning. The feeling of being lost is not the final destination. It is the opening of a path where you stop repeating old scripts and start writing your own. By the end of this journey, you will see that what looks like collapse is actually the soil for creation. The silence is not a void to fear. It is the space where your true compass can begin to grow. Look around and you will see a world that never stops talking. Notifications, opinions, trends, and judgments fill every corner of life. It feels like everyone knows where they are going, what matters, and how to live. But if you listen closely, the noise does not come from truth. It comes from fear. Nietzsche called it the herd instinct. When old systems of meaning collapsed, people did not suddenly become free thinkers. Most of them simply looked to the crowd to tell them what to value next. And the crowd always provides an answer, even if that answer is hollow. Think about the goals most people chase. A bigger salary, a perfect body. the image of success carefully displayed online. At first, these seem like personal desires, but trace them back and you will notice they come from outside, not from within. They are borrowed values, absorbed from the herd. You think you want them because everyone else seems to. But the truth is, the herd has slipped its mask onto you. And when you wear that mask long enough, you begin to confuse it with your own face. This is why so many people work themselves into exhaustion, chasing achievements that feel strangely empty when they arrive. It is not that the achievement is worthless. It is that it never belonged to them in the first place. Nietzsche saw that when people live by the herd's values, they become actors. Their lives are performances, not expressions of who they really are. The applause of others keeps the play going, but the soul behind it grows restless. Here is the uncomfortable truth. The herd will always reward you for conformity. You will be praised for fitting in, for chasing what others chase, for sacrificing your individuality to keep the collective dream alive. But the reward is shallow. Approval today turns into criticism tomorrow, and no amount of recognition can settle the feeling that you are living someone else's script. Nietzsche believed this was a form of quiet despair, a life lived safely, but never fully. You can already sense this in your own life, the comparisons that drain you, the trends that pressure you, the need to prove yourself in ways that never quite satisfy. That is the herd speaking through you. And the first step to breaking free is simply noticing it. Ask yourself, whose goals am I really chasing? Who told me that this was success, and why did I believe them? These questions are dangerous to the herd because once you ask them, the noise begins to lose its power. Nietzsche did not want you to hate the herd. He wanted you to see it clearly, to recognize how much of its noise you have mistaken for your own voice. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The mask slips, and in that moment, you begin to hear something else underneath the noise, a quieter, more difficult sound, your own thoughts, your own longings, your own direction. That is where freedom begins, not in shouting louder than the herd, but in refusing to let its noise define who you are. There comes a moment when the noise fades and you are left alone with a silence so heavy it feels like it could swallow you whole. The goals you borrowed no longer inspire you. The traditions you once trusted no longer feel solid. Even the distractions that once worked begin to lose their grip. This is the place Nietzsche warned about. He called it nihilism, the abyss you face when all inherited meaning collapses. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid this place because it feels like standing at the edge of nothing. But Nietzsche saw it not as weakness, but as truth revealed. When the structures that once guided humanity crumble, emptiness is what remains, and that emptiness can be terrifying. It makes you feel unanchored, like drifting without a map or compass. Many try to cover it up with new illusions, chasing after quick answers or shallow pleasures. But if you have ever felt that those things do not work for long, it is because you are confronting what lies underneath. The sense that nothing has inherent meaning. That life, at its core, does not come pre-packaged with purpose. This realization can feel like a collapse of the soul. You might find yourself asking, what is the point of anything if nothing is guaranteed to matter? But here is the truth Nietzsche wanted you to see. To face this abyss is not to fall. It is to finally open your eyes, because in the absence of imposed meaning, you begin to understand something radical. If nothing is given, then everything is possible. The abyss strips away illusions, but in doing so, It leaves you with the raw material of freedom. Most people are too afraid to stay here. They run back to borrowed values, even if they know those values are lies, because the abyss feels unbearable. But Nietzsche believed that the few who could endure it, who could look into nothingness without flinching, would discover their own strength. It is in this silence, when no external voice tells you what matters, that you begin to hear yourself. Not the self shaped by the herd, not the self trapped by tradition, but the deeper self that has been waiting underneath. Think of it like standing in a dark room. At first, the blackness terrifies you, but slowly, your eyes adjust, shapes emerge, you begin to see what you could not before. That is what happens in nihilism. The darkness is not empty, it is space, a blank canvas where new meaning can be created. And in that realization, what once felt like despair begins to feel like possibility. Nietzsche never promised this would be easy. The abyss is not a stage you skip past quickly. It is a trial, and trials change you. To face it without running is to accept that life does not hand you purpose. You must build it. And once you understand that, being lost no longer feels like the end of your story. It feels like the beginning of freedom. When you finally stop running from the abyss, you realize that emptiness is not the end, but a doorway. Nietzsche never wanted you to remain in the void. He wanted you to use it, to see that the collapse of old values clears the ground for something new. The question is not what meaning exists, but what meaning you can create. This is where you begin to build your compass. For most of your life, you have carried maps that were not your own. Family expectations, cultural standards, the endless noise of the herd. These maps promised safety, but they never truly led you to yourself. When those maps fail, the first instinct is panic. You feel directionless, but that loss of direction is also your greatest chance, because now you have the freedom to draw a map that fits who you really are. And the first step in creating it is to ask a question most people never dare to. What do I value? Not because I was told to, but because it makes me come alive. Nietzsche believed that values are not inherited truths. They are chosen acts of creation. To build your compass, you must notice what genuinely energizes you. What pursuits make time vanish? What challenges sharpen your spirit instead of draining it? What struggles feel worth the pain because they leave you stronger? These are not easy to discover because they are buried under layers of noise. But if you strip away the applause and ask what you would still do if no one else noticed, you begin to uncover the raw materials of your compass. Another key question is this: what is worth suffering for? Nietzsche understood that comfort never leads to greatness. If you avoid struggle at all costs, you also avoid growth. The things that truly matter to you will demand sacrifice. They will test your limits. That is why identifying what you are willing to endure is more powerful than chasing what feels easy, because suffering for the right cause does not feel like defeat. It feels like meaning. As you gather these answers, your compass begins to take shape. It will not look like anyone else's, and that is the point. Society will always try to lure you back with borrowed values, with promises of quick rewards and validation. But a true compass points inward, not outward. It does not seek applause. It does not bend to trends. It quietly aligns you with what is real in you. And once you find it, you no longer need the herd to tell you who you are. Nietzsche's vision was not of a person who follows a path already laid, but of one who forges their own. Building your compass is the act of choosing, again and again, to live by values that are yours, even when they are difficult. That is what makes them true. And once you begin, the silence of the abyss no longer frightens you. It becomes a space where your North Star shines through, a star that belongs only to you. There is a moment when you realize the search itself has been the trap. You have been wandering, hoping to stumble across meaning waiting for you somewhere out there. But Nietzsche's final lesson is that meaning is not found, it is made. The journey was never about uncovering a hidden treasure. It was about becoming the one who creates. Most people spend their lives as seekers. They look for teachers, institutions, movements, or ideologies to hand them the answers. And for a time, those borrowed meanings can soothe the fear of emptiness. But deep down, you already know they do not last. Every borrowed path eventually cracks, and the seeker is left adrift again. Nietzsche wanted you to see that this cycle ends not when you find the perfect system, but when you stop seeking altogether. That is the moment you step into creation. To create your own meaning is not to invent something shallow on a whim. It is to build out of your deepest instincts, your highest struggles, and your strongest desires. It means shaping life as if it were art, crafted with intention. Ask yourself, if there were no map, no audience, no applause, what kind of life would I sculpt for myself? That question is dangerous because it strips away every excuse. It places the responsibility back on you, and that responsibility is freedom. Nietzsche's vision of the strong spirit was not someone who obeys or imitates, but someone who generates, someone who can take loss, chaos, and even suffering and turn it into power. You stop waiting for the world to tell you who you are. You begin to write it with every choice you make, and in that act, being lost is no longer a problem. It is the beginning of creation. Think of the people you admire most. They are not the ones who followed the herd or clung to old scripts. They are the ones who dared to carve their own path, often at great cost. Their strength did not come from certainty handed to them, but from courage to create in uncertainty. Nietzsche believed that the highest form of life is not comfort or safety, but the will to shape existence according to your own vision. This transformation is not a single moment, it is a practice. Each time you choose your own compass over the herd, each time you turn suffering into strength, each time you refuse to wait for meaning and instead create it, you are living Nietzsche's cure. You are not a seeker anymore, you are a builder. And this is where the journey turns full circle. Being lost was never proof of weakness. It was the signal that the old world had ended and that a new one was waiting to be created. By stepping into that role, you stop wandering and start becoming. Not a follower, not a seeker, but the creator of who you truly are.